is this. Is this correct?
$50,000.
They laughed, not quietly, not behind his back. They laughed right in front of him, because when Harold Jensen stepped into that auction barn, he didn't look like a man who belonged there. He looked like a man who had already lost. His boots were cracked, the soles peeling away like they'd given up years ago. His overalls were stitched together so many times they weren't really clothes anymore, just survival. His cap was so faded you couldn't read what it once said. And outside, sitting crooked in the gravel lot, was his truck. Rust eating through the doors, duct tape holding the side mirror in place, an engine that sounded like it was arguing with itself just to stay alive. One man nudged another and smirked. That thing barely made it here. Another chuckled. Yeah, and he probably can't afford the gas to get back. A few people laughed. Harold heard them. Of course he did, but he didn't react, didn't look at them, didn't defend himself, didn't explain anything. He just kept walking, slow, steady, like a man who wasn't in a hurry to prove anything to anyone. It was November 4th, 1989, the Keller Farm Equipment Liquidation Auction, Waterloo, Iowa. Stay with me until the end. Before we begin, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. The biggest farm auction the state had ever seen, 32 John Deere tractors, all running, all maintained, all lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Dealers had come from 3 different states. Banks had sent representatives. Serious farmers had driven for hours just to be there, because this wasn't just an auction. This was opportunity. Millions of dollars worth of equipment, about to change hands and standing quietly in the back was Harold Jensen, 67 years old, a man everyone knew, but nobody really understood. Harold farmed 320 acres outside town. Not a big operation, not flashy, not growing. He had never expanded, never upgraded to the newest equipment. His newest tractor was from 1968, his oldest. From 1952, machines most farmers wouldn't even consider using anymore. To most people, Harold looked stuck, left behind, struggling, and over the years, people had built a story about him. Nice guy, works hard, but probably barely. Getting by, that's what they believed. That's what everyone believed. The auctioneer stepped forward at exactly 9 a.m. Stan Morrison, best in Iowa, fast voice, sharp eyes, knows how to read a crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Keller liquidation. The room quieted instantly. We're selling 32 John Deere tractors today. You could feel it in the air. That tension, that anticipation. This wasn't small money. This was serious business. Stan didn't start small. He went straight for the big move. I'm offering the entire lot. All 32 tractors, as one purchase. A ripple moved through the crowd. Opening bid, $2.4 million. Silence, not hesitation. Silence, because even for the big players, that number was heavy. Stan adjusted. 2.2 million. Nothing. Million even. Still nothing. Because buying all 32 at once wasn't just expensive, it was risk, too much inventory, too much cash, too much exposure. Finally, a hand went up in the back. 0.6 million. A dealer from Chicago. Another. Hand. 1.7. Minneapolis. Then, nothing. The momentum died. Stan paused, then made the call. All right, folks, we'll sell individually. And just like that, the room relaxed, because now everyone could play. The first tractor rolled up. 987 John Deere. Mint condition. Opening at 90,000. Hands shot up immediately. Bidding moved fast. Sharp. Aggressive. 100. 105. 110. 112. Sold. Applause. Next one. Same story. Then another. And another. Prices climbing. Energy building. Competition heating up. This was what people came for, and through all of it, Harold didn't move, didn't raise his hand, didn't step forward. He just stood there, watching, listening, calculating. His eyes moved from tractor to tractor, not with excitement, but with focus, like he wasn't looking at machines. He was studying something deeper. By noon, 18 tractors were gone, total sales pushing nearly $2 million. The crowd buzzed with energy. People stepped outside for lunch. Food, trucks, coffee, conversations, deals being discussed, speculation everywhere. Harold walked out quietly. No conversation, no networking. He went straight to his truck, sat inside, pulled out a sandwich from a paper bag, and ate alone. Woe, younger farmers. Walked past his truck. One glanced at it and laughed. Man, I'm surprised that thing didn't fall apart on the road. The other shook his head. He probably can't even afford a hot dog out here. They laughed and kept walking. Inside the truck, Harold chewed slowly, took a sip from his thermos, and said nothing. No anger, no reaction. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from weakness, but from knowing something others don't. At 1 p.m., the auction resumed. More tractors, more bidding, more money flying. The crowd was thinner. Now, but still serious, still competitive. By 3 p.m., only 4 tractors remained. The older ones, less attractive, less demand. The energy had shifted. Tractor 29, sold tractor 30, sold tractor 31. Barely any competition, but still sold. Then came the last one. Tractor number 32, a 1973 John Deere 4020 old basic. Nothing special. At least on the surface. Opening bid, $35,000. One hand went up, a local farmer. 35. Stan looked around. Do I hear 40? Silence. 38. Nothing. Stan raised the gavel slightly. Going once. Still nothing. Going twice. A hand went up, in the back. Slow, steady, unshaken. The room turned. Heads shifted. Eyes narrowed. Because the hand that went up belonged to Harold Jensen. Stan paused, just for a second, like he wanted to make sure he saw correctly. Sir, you're bidding? Harold nodded. 40,000. And just like that, everything changed. The same man they laughed at, the same man they ignored, the same man they assumed had nothing, was now bidding $40,000. Like, it meant nothing. The crowd started whispering, is that Harold? He's bidding? Where'd he get that kind of money? The original bidder hesitated, then responded. Art, Harold didn't wait. 45. No emotion, no hesitation, just calm. The room went quiet because this wasn't normal anymore. This wasn't expected. This was wrong, at least in their minds. The other bidder looked around, thought for a moment, then slowly lowered his hand. Too expensive now, too strange, too uncertain. Stan lifted the gavel. Sold for $50,000 to the gentleman in the back. And for the first time that entire day, every single person in that room was looking at Harold Jensen, not laughing anymore, not joking, not whispering, just staring. Because something didn't make sense. And when things don't make sense, people pay attention. Harold stepped forward, slowly, calmly, like nothing unusual had just happened. And that's when the real story was about to begin. The room didn't go back to normal. It couldn't, because something had shifted, just minutes ago. Harold Jensen was invisible. Now, he was the only person anyone could see. People didn't leave right away. They lingered, pretending to check paperwork, pretending to finish conversations. But really, they were watching him, trying to figure him out. Did you see that? He just dropped 50,000. Cash? No way. Where would he even get that kind of money? The same people who laughed at his truck were now whispering like they'd missed something important, because they had. Harold didn't rush, didn't act excited, didn't celebrate. He walked up to the payment table like a man paying a normal bill. Behind the table sat Sarah, mid-20s. Organized, sharp. She'd been processing payments all morning, big checks, serious buyers, people who looked like they had money, people who looked the part. Then Harold stepped in front of her. She glanced up briefly, then looked again. Because he didn't match the pattern, Mr. Jensen, right? She said, checking the sheet. Yes, you won lot 32. $50,000, he nodded. How will you be paying? There was a pause, just a second, but long enough to matter. Cash, Sarah blinked. Not because of the word, but because of the man saying it. Cash, as in currency, she asked carefully. Harold reached into his pocket, pulled out a checkbook, and placed it gently on the table. I have a check. Sarah let out a small breath. Oh, yes, that's perfectly fine. But her curiosity didn't go away, because something still didn't add up. She watched him write. His hand steady. No hesitation, no double-checking the balance, no signs of stress, just a clean, simple motion. Like this wasn't a big deal, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. He tore the check, handed it over. $50,000. Sarah looked at it, then looked at him, then back at the check. Everything about him said he shouldn't be able to do this, but the check said otherwise. She processed it, stamped the paperwork. You're all set, Mr. Jensen. The tractor is yours. He nodded, turned, started to walk away, and that's when curiosity got the better of her. Mr. Jensen? He stopped, turned slightly. Can I ask you something? A pause, then a small nod. Why that tractor? She hesitated, then added, It's the oldest one here. You could have bid on something newer. For the first time, Harold smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just knowing, didn't need newer. He paused, then added quietly, just needed a good one. And then he walked out. That answer didn't satisfy anyone, because it raised more questions than it answered. Outside, people watched him climb into that same rusty truck, the one they laughed at. The engine struggled, coughed, then started, and he drove away with a $50,000 tractor purchase. And a mystery no one could explain. Monday morning, the auction office was quiet. Paperwork, phones, routine. The excitement of Saturday had faded. Sarah was at her desk, organizing files, when the door opened. She looked up and froze. Harold Jensen, standing there again. Mr. Jensen? She said, surprised. Everything all right with the tractor? He nodded. It's fine. A pause. Then, I want to buy more. Sarah blinked. We sold everything Saturday. I know. He stepped closer. Some went to dealers. She nodded slowly. Yes. I want to buy from them. Now she was fully confused. Which ones? Harold reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to her. She opened it, read it, then read it again. Numbers, a list. Through 31. Every single tractor, except the one he already owned. Her eyes lifted slowly. You want all of them? Yes. The room felt different again, like Saturday, but quieter, heavier. Mr. Jensen, she said carefully, those tractors were bought by dealers. They're going to resell them. With markup. He nodded. I understand. She hesitated. Do you know how much that would cost? He didn't answer, just looked at her, waiting. She took a breath. Rough estimate. About $3.5 million. The number sat in the air. Heavy, uncomfortable, unreal. Most people would react, laugh, walk away, say it's impossible. Harold didn't, can. You call them? He asked. Sarah stared at him, trying to figure out if this was serious or something else entirely. Mr. Jensen, her voice lowered slightly. Do you actually have that kind of money? For the first time, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his overalls pocket, pulled out a folded document, and placed it on the desk. Here, Sarah unfolded it. Her eyes moved across the page, then stopped, then widened, then froze. Account statement. First Federal Bank. Balance 11,240,000 She didn't speak, couldn't. Everything she thought she understood just broke. She looked up at him. Different now. Not confused, not curious, respectful. This is your account? Yes. Simple. Calm. Like it meant nothing. I can pay cash, he added. For all of them. Silence filled the room. But it wasn't. The same silence as before. This one was heavy with realization. Because the man everyone thought was broke wasn't just comfortable, he was wealthy. Wealthy. And no one saw it. Sarah swallowed. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. You can't possibly need 32 tractors. Harold smiled again. That same quiet smile. Not for me. A pause. For others. She frowned slightly. Others? He nodded. Young farmers. People starting out. People who can't afford equipment. Each word slow, intentional, real. People. Like I was. And just like that, this wasn't about money anymore. It was about something deeper. Can you call them? He repeated. This time, she didn't hesitate. Yeah, she said softly. I can. And over the next 24 hours, she did. 7 dealers, 7 conversations, 7 shocked reactions, and every single one of them said yes. Because money talks. But something else was happening too. Word started spreading. Fast, by Tuesday afternoon, people were talking again. But not laughing, not joking, not mocking. They were saying his name differently now. Harold Jensen. Not as a joke, as a story, as a question, as a man no one had understood until it was too late. Wednesday morning. Harold walked back into the office. But this time, he wasn't alone. A banker stood beside him. Suit, briefcase, professional, the kind of man people expected to see handling millions. They sat down, dealers joined, paperwork laid out. And then, the moment. The banker opened the briefcase, pulled out a cashier's check, $3,280,000, placed it on the table. No drama, no speech, no hesitation, just action. The dealers stared, because this wasn't negotiation anymore. This was final. This was real. The man they ignored had just bought everything, all 32 tractors, every single one. Total paid $3.33 million cash. And just like that, Harold Jensen owned the entire auction. But the biggest shock was still coming. Because when Sarah finally asked, Mr. Jensen, what are you going to do with them? He didn't hesitate. Give them away. The room went silent. Not confused silence, not curious silence, stunned silence. Give them away, she repeated. He nodded. To young farmers. To people who need a start. He looked around the room, at the dealers, at the banker, at Sarah. 45 years ago, he said quietly, someone gave me a tractor. And in that moment, everything came full circle. Not money, not business, legacy. Changed my life, he spoke. Then he looked back at Sarah. Now it's my turn. And just like that, the man they laughed at became the man no one would ever forget. The news didn't spread. Slowly, it exploded. By Thursday morning, everyone in Black Hawk County knew his name, not as a joke anymore, not as that poor old farmer with the broken truck, but as something else. Did you hear about Harold Jensen? He bought all 32 tractors. Cash. $3 million. And he's giving them away. People didn't believe it at first. It sounded like a story people tell at diners, the kind that grows every time it's repeated. But this one didn't grow. It didn't need to, because it was already unbelievable. The local newspaper ran the headline, Farmer buys $3.3 million in equipment, gives it away. And suddenly, the man nobody noticed became the man nobody could stop talking about. But Harold didn't change. He didn't buy a new truck, didn't upgrade his clothes, didn't move into a bigger house. The next morning, he was back on his farm, same boots, same overalls, same routine. Because for him, nothing had changed, except everything. Applications started coming in, not dozens, not even 50. Hundreds, young farmers, struggling families, people trying to hold on to land their parents once worked, people with dreams, but no equipment. Over 200 applications, in just a few days, each one telling a story. I've been renting land for 3 years. I work 2 jobs just to keep my farm alive. I want to farm, but I can't afford to start. Most people would have hired a team, created a system, turned it into a program. Harold didn't. He read every single application himself, late nights, kitchen table, lamplight, page after page, story after story, not looking for the smartest, not looking for the most experienced, looking for something else. Character, need, hunger. He didn't want people who wanted easy. He wanted people who would use the chance. A week later, he made his decision. Names, lives, about to change. He invited them all to his farm. They arrived one by one. Nervous, confused, hopeful, but not expecting much. Because things like this don't happen in real life. Not to people like them, and then they saw it, all 32 tractors, cleaned, lined up, ready, like a second auction. But this time, there was no bidding, just silence, and Harold standing in front of them. He didn't give a speech, didn't try to sound important. He just spoke like a farmer. Pick one. That's it. At first, no one moved, because they thought there had to be a catch, payments, contracts, conditions. But there weren't. One young man stepped forward slowly, touched the tire of a tractor like it wasn't real. I mean, we just take it? Harold nodded. Use it. A pause. And when you can, he looked at all of them. Help someone else. That was the only rule. No interest, no deadlines, no pressure, just a promise. And in that moment, something shifted. Not just in those 32 people, but in the entire community. One of them, a 24-year-old named Michael, broke down crying. I've been saving for 5 years, he said, voice shaking. I've got $18,000. I'm not even close. He looked at the tractor in front of him, a machine worth over $100,000. These changes everything. Harold just nodded. Then you were right. Another, a woman named Jennifer, stood there in disbelief, because no one had ever taken her seriously as a farmer. Banks said no. Dealers ignored her. But Harold, he didn't see gender, didn't see background. He saw potential. And for the first time, someone believed in her. The youngest, 19 years old, didn't even know what to say, because how do you respond when someone hands you your future? By Christmas of 1989, all 32 tractors were gone. Not sold, given. And something incredible started happening. Those tractors didn't just work fields, they built lives. Within a few years, most of those farmers were still going, growing, expanding. 10 years later, 28 out of 32 were still successful. That's nearly unheard of, because farming is hard. Most don't make it, but these did. Why? Because someone believed in them before. They believed in themselves. They bought land, hired workers, built businesses. Families stayed on farms. Instead of losing them, communities grew stronger. All from one decision, and something even more powerful happened. They didn't forget. Michael paid Harold back. Every $140,000 took him 8 years. He walked up, handed over the final payment, and said, "You changed my life." Harold accepted it, then did something no one expected. He gave that money to another young farmer. That became the pattern. Money came back and went right back out, like a cycle, not of profit, but of opportunity. Jennifer didn't pay him back with money. She helped other farmers instead, mentored them, supported them, opened doors, because that's what Harold gave her, a door, and that's how it spread. Not just tractors, a mindset. Over the eye. Years. Harold helped more than 70 farmers, millions of dollars, given quietly, without attention, without needing credit. And still, he lived the same way, same small house, same old truck, same worn clothes, because he didn't need more. He had already figured something out. Most people never do. Wealth isn't about what you keep, it's about what you give. When Harold passed away in 2003, over 900 people came to his funeral. Farmers, families, workers, people whose lives were directly changed by him. One by one, they stood up, shared stories. Because of him, I still have my farm. Because of him, my kids have a future. Because of him, I didn't quit. And then Michael stood up, now older, successful, strong. He looked around the room, took a breath, and said, Harold Jensen didn't just give away tractors. He gave away chances, and then trusted us not to waste them. Silence filled the room. Not empty silence, meaningful silence, the kind that stays with you. Because, in the end, that's what people remembered. Not the $3.3 million, not the auction, not the shock, but the impact, the lives, the ripple effect. A man who looked poor, but was rich. A man who lived simply, but gave big. A man who was underestimated, but changed everything. And the lesson? Never judge a farmer by his overalls. Because sometimes, those patches are hiding millions. And sometimes, the quietest man in the room is the one who changes the world. Harold Jensen did. And the people who laughed that day never laughed again. Top'em of form.